Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Podcraft. This is the show all about running a successful podcast, helping you make a success of your show, whatever way you see that. I'm Colin Gray from thepodcasthost.com and alitu.com, and joined by Matthew. As always, how are you getting on, Matthew?
Fine. How are you?
Good, yeah, not too bad. Excited to actually dig into a predictions episode for the first time potentially ever. We talk about this every year, but we're always a bit too reticent to take it on, aren't we?
What does reticent mean?
Really? You're a writer?
I know. I don't actually know what it means.
Reluctant. It's essentially the same word as reluctant. I don't know what the difference is, actually. There's some subtle differences, but basically reluctant.
Come in handy. I'm a keen crossworder at the weekend, so yeah, that might
reticent,
come in handy.
I think, is a more wary than reluctant. You know, it's like a wary version of reluctant. You're kind of wary to take it on. Yeah. Anyway,
you're right.
Yeah, so we've got go for it.
No, I was just going to say you're right. Like, we haven't done one of these in the past. I touched on it last episode. I either feel that a prediction is just too obvious that everyone's like, of course, or you have to do something a bit clever and edgy, and you just get it completely wrong, or it's useless. But I think the prompts you put down there were useful, and I gave it some thorough thought, and I'm quite happy with what I've come up with, so I'm looking forward to chatting through it.
Cool. Yeah. Credit for this format actually goes to the Mostly Technical podcast, which I've been listening to a lot recently. Great show with two great co-hosts, and their predictions episode was exactly this. They were prepared enough where they asked their listeners to send in the questions. So I thought that was a great format, like reach out and say, listeners, send in your questions for 2026. And then the hosts gave their answers and therefore predictions for the coming year. So given that we were less organized, I just made up the questions based similarly on some of the ones they had, but other ones related particularly to podcasting. So yeah, hopefully this is a good way to go about it. Before we jump in, Matthew, I'll mention our content is always supported by Alitu. If you're looking for a great app to start a new podcast, make it the easiest way to edit, record, and publish, or if you're looking to make your workflow better and easier, an easier way to edit, an easier way to create, then go and check out Alitu. That's alitu.com. That's alitu.com. Right, Matthew, should we jump into the first question?
Let's get it done. Yeah, what's the single biggest change we'll see in podcasting by the end of 2026? What's your thoughts?
I'm going to start with something we've kind of banged the drum on a little bit, but I think this is actually the year where it'll come back to audio only. I think there'll be a lot of people dedicating themselves to audio only. I think there'll be a lot of people saying, yes, video, it does work for some shows. And it's the way we've said it a lot, but actually a lot more dedication to this. But a lot more people saying, right, no, actually, one of my uniquenesses is actually that I'm going to be audio only. I'm going to make it really customized to that format. And I'm going to get myself out on a really consistent basis and be able to spend a lot of time on promo, on quality, on monetization, all of those things because of that too, because you're deliberately excluding video. So yeah, that's one of my predictions for 2026. What do you think on that?
Totally agree. And I've kind of broken my predictions down in this segment into two. And this is my more hopeful one, that there will be a backlash against mainly big shows that are serving up audio that's ripped from video. Like, it was designed to be a video, and we as the listeners have just been handed the audio of that video. It's my hope that more and more people are just going to be saying, look, this simply isn't good enough. This is not a good enough listening experience. There are people out there putting a lot of time and creativity into creating brilliant audio, and I'm just not prepared to sit and listen to your video anymore. By all means, make a video, but don't just rip the audio or design the video. So we got into this last week. There's no need to go over it all again. But you know what I mean? I hear anecdotally just more and more people say that they're tired of looking at screens, full stop, as well. So that totally ties in, Colin, to the audio thing. I think people are looking for a break from screens, and audio, as we know, has always filled that purpose. And hopefully it's a really good year for audio.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's people are sick of screens for sure. I think you're totally right there. But there's also just the thing that podcasting was always great for, which was when your eyes are busy. It's like, you're walking the dog, you're ironing, you're cooking your dinner, you're driving, whatever it is. I think people are just going to realize that all the video hype is in some ways justified. It's a great way to be discovered for some shows, but actually it's a big drawback in other ways. And actually people still really want pure audio only content for those contexts. So yeah, for sure. Any more for 2026?
Yeah, more of a kind of industry-based one, but I feel that, a trend that we're maybe seeing, and I think that'll ramp up this year, is just fewer and fewer single-use tools or platforms. Like, hosting providers are a good example of this. Like, a lot of hosting providers have existed and done very well because they're great podcast hosts. But I am wondering, how many more years are they going to get out of that without offering extra tools, extra features, all-in-one features, like ourselves at Alitu, little plug.
Yeah.
But, we have hosting, we have recording, we have editing, we have all of that. And I think more and more platforms are going to be looking at that model as something to replicate. And whether that means building features themselves or just, taking on a company that does that specific thing that they're needing.
Yeah.
I think we'll see more of that. We'll see less tools and platforms, but they'll all collectively do more. What do you think about that?
I think that's spot on. Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of goes into that, the narrative that podcasting actually becomes more of a capability or a platform than, its own category. Like listeners don't want, nobody comes into podcasting saying, right, my goal of this is to start an RSS feed.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not what it is. So like hosting, you do need that. Arguably, but I think you still do need that. You still want to deliver your podcast via an RSS feed, but that's just kind of a consequence of what your real goal is, which is to grow an audience and, either monetize a company through that or monetize the podcast itself or have an impact, however you want to do it. And so like listeners come in and the simple act of delivering an RSS feed or even some of the more specialized hosting things like delivering advertising and things like that, they almost fade into the background because creators expect the whole thing. I think you're absolutely right. Like they want publishing, but they also want great analytics that they can use for sponsor deals. But then the analytics actually needs to tie in their newsletter and their YouTube channel and their social media, because you're not going to sell just sponsorship on your podcast if you're a larger creator. It's going to be the podcast plus all the other parts. And then monetization's the same. It ties in not just the podcast, but everything else you do in content. And I think that's probably going to be a big part of it, is that most creators, most people who do a podcast, maybe not most, that's probably unfair, but a good proportion of the people that do a podcast will be doing other parts as well, because it's part of a content mix. So yeah, absolutely. Those software platforms need to kind of move out. Potentially solo hosting platforms or solo any other types might kind of fall by the wayside. Yeah, I think you're right there. Any
other predictions in this sort of category?
The last one I'll put in here is, not controversial exactly, but it's potentially doom and gloom and potentially good, I think. And I think this year AI editing is going to become a much bigger thing, actually. I think that a lot of people will start using AI to edit the content of their podcast, whether that means the basic version of taking a transcript, putting it into Claude or ChatGPT and saying, like, what parts could I cut out? That kind of stuff will happen more and more, I think, this year, because I think AI tools are actually getting better at that. They're still not perfect, but if you work with it, you give it your voice, you give it direction, actually it can give you some good starting points. It's a good first draft, as we've often talked about, which I think AI is a great one for. But I also think the big tools, it's something we're looking at with Alitu, like how can we build that into Alitu to actually help people and save them time, but still give them creative control and still keep that human voice in there. And I think the other tools will be totally looking at as well. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some brand new tools come out which go on the premise that just upload your audio, just your raw recording, and they'll send you back a cut down version, like to upload a 60-minute raw audio file and they'll send you back a 40-minute, a 30-minute, whatever it is, edited version that includes bits of music, it includes like cut out the padding, it includes, transitions, all that kind of stuff. I would not be surprised at all. In fact, I would be surprised if that doesn't happen this coming year, because the models are just becoming really intelligent and really good at including a lot of direction from us. There'll be tools that actually don't have any of that direction, and they'll be crap. Like, they'll come out with rubbish results, but there'll be other ones that come out and let you give a lot more direction and give a lot more of your voice and say, here's what I'm looking for. So yeah, that's what I think. What do you think on that, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, this will tie into what we talk about further on, but and I don't know if this technology either already exists or it's just a bit too out there at this moment in time. But if you think about how a tool like Grammarly would take a paragraph that you've written and just rewrite it for you in a more eloquent way, and I wonder if we might see, say you and I, recorded, and we put our audio into whatever AI tool it was, and it wasn't just taking out ums and ahs, it was completely rebuilding a question or answer with our voice, and making it really streamlined. Like I'm saying, this ties into what we're going to talk about later on, and I don't think there's an appetite from a consumer point of view for that level of polish now, but that's not going to stop somebody making a tool like this and trying to punt it at folk. So, yeah.
I think it's going to come in. But yeah, whether it's a good or a bad thing, I'm not sure. We'll see. All right. Next one. So will Spotify make any major moves in podcasting in 2026? One of the big guys of the podcasting space. Any new features, acquisitions, or might even pull back? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking this for the last couple of years, but like, I've always thought they would buy Riverside. I thought they would have done that by now. If you create a show on Spotify for creators like that's hosted there, I'm sure it's only hosted on Spotify shows, but you could create an episode and there's an integration, like it basically says record right now with Riverside, and you press this wee button and it basically takes you to the login screen for Riverside. So it's like, it's still a separate tool, but they've gone as far as to say, like, please use this. So I'm wondering, will they want to get a tool like Riverside just built in and just have that recording capability? But there's an issue I'm always thinking of, which is like Riverside probably powers a lot of YouTube. And if you took that away from YouTube, I know other tools will be happy to take its place. And, you've got Zencast or Alitu, obviously, Descript or Squadcast. But yeah, this is just a kind of feeling I've had for a couple of years. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you could be right there. I think it's interesting that thought about like whether that would be, it's a huge strategic move, you're right, that a lot of YouTube recording is done on Riverside, and therefore it would be a big bite out of YouTube's cherry if they were fully Spotify branded. But go back, like, do you remember the original? I mean, Spotify originally bought Anchor, didn't they?
Yeah.
And Anchor was a hosting platform, but it was a creator platform first. I still remember like wandering around our Dundee office like 10, 15 years ago, and listening to an Anchor show for the first time, where it was people just recording these little clips that were all pieced together. It was a really interesting tool back then. Spotify then bought that over and they turned it into, was that the original? Did they call that Spotify for Creators at the start? Am I right in thinking that?
So when they finally rebranded Anchor, I think they went to Spotify for Podcasters, which they've since changed to for
You're
Creators.
Right. Yeah. So it changed to that, but it still had the creation tools in there. And then they also had a separate like creation tool in it. Like they had what was that one called? There was at one point Spotify had two different creator tools. There was a place where you could record and edit that was not Anchor, but they also had the Anchor version and what that converted into too. And they essentially shut both of them down and really just kept the hosting. So you can't record in Spotify anymore, even though you could in two separate places at one point. So it was a really weird one. So yeah, they've obviously played with it, but it would be a whole different prospect to buy over something like Riverside altogether, wouldn't it? So yeah, I like that.
As a
possibly.
A shout back to Anchor as well. Like that was just, I think Anchor was around at the wrong time. I mean, obviously the people behind it did all right, but
yes,
you think about like that. I like looking back. I wasn't keen on it at the time because I felt it just encouraged a lot of people to put out experimental stuff that didn't sound very good, and the audio was crap because that was smartphones at the time. People were using their phones. If you think about the smartphone default recording now, not to mention all the great lav mics you could add in, plus the AI cleanup capabilities we have these days, an app like that would be really, really good. Like as a, creating an audio podcast app, it would be fantastic. Yep. I don't know that necessarily exists right now, but if you took Anchor from 2016 or that and brought it in today, I think I think I would find myself recommending it to people, to be quite honest. But
yeah. It was a great idea, like create kind of almost live programs on the go, but with a little bit of production value. You could you could record something quickly on your phone, put a little tiny bit of music behind it, and just kind of add it to your publishing queue, wasn't it? And people would just kind of listen to bits and bits of it. And you would check in every couple of days, and you would get like 4 or 5 different thoughts recorded at different times. So it's a really cool idea. But yeah, you're right. You'd be much better now with the cleanup and the better gear. I think for me, there's a couple of things that they'll move into. There's no question. I think that they'll make videos easier to upload. Right now, it's just so unintegrated. Like the fact that you link your show to Spotify and it's audio only generally, and then you have to go in there and upload the video separately. They're pushing video so much that I think they're going to make that somehow better. How that will be, I'm not sure, because the hosting platforms don't necessarily make it easy either. Like whether there's more people get into the HLS way of delivering and they can kind of soak in that, or whether they link more into YouTube and can draw the video from YouTube. But then again, that's basically their competitor. So I'm not sure there, but I think there's got to be something that changes there to make video uploading more simple. And then I think the other part is the engagement features. Like I think they've pushed the engagement features more than any other app in terms of comments, for example, they've been able to comment on episodes and stuff like that, which isn't necessarily that well used yet, but still is a nice idea. So I think those two are the areas that I would get into. Would you, if you were wishing for more engagement features, Matthew, different ways to engage your audience, like those comments or something similar, what would you wish for?
I think with the comments, you've potentially got enough there. I mean, one feature, it's not necessarily engagement, but all ties in. Like one feature I would like to see, whether from Spotify or any other podcasting app, is almost like a podcaster dating feature for shows that want to collaborate. So like,
That's nice.
if I'm in there and like I just make my show available, like I'm open to collaborations, and Spotify comes to me and says, well, these 3 shows in your niche or an adjacent audience are also up for it. Like, let's put you directly in touch with them. Here's the things I'm interested in doing, co-hosted episodes or montages or that. And then it creates a way to, when you've put this episode out, it kind of promotes it on both feeds. Like, I don't know, that it could really streamline that process. So
it's a great idea in terms of, imagine if they had that kind of matchmaking element to it, but also just a one button click almost that says like, or tick 2 episodes, tick an episode on your feed, an episode on their feed, and it would swap them. It would put those both on the opposite feeds so that you do that kind of episode swap really simply. And even a way to kind of even it out. One of the tricky parts of doing episode swaps like that is that it's usually hard to, there's always a bit of a balance in terms of listenership. So like, I've got a bigger audience than them, so is it fair? Like, is it really worthwhile for me? But maybe you do it so that they have the listenership, they know the listenership, and therefore they can actually match up the listens. So you play your episode or your maybe this is more a trailer swap thing, but they play your trailer on 3 episodes and their trailer on only one of yours, but the listenership matches up, the actual ears heard. Something like that. That'd be quite cool.
Yeah, like you're right. They have all the back end data to be able to like recommend something that's fair. Instead of like Rogan plays one of mine, I play one of his. Like that's not fair, but you know what I mean. Like there's all sorts of clever ways they could run that.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, I'd like that. Some collaboration features. Yeah, I mean the other apps could do that quite nicely too, or even hosting platforms like. Buzzsprout is one of the hosting platforms I think that's done a bit more work here in terms of the sponsorship tools that they have, which are quite nice. So being able to sponsor, but they don't quite, it's a paid deal, really. They don't quite have the episode swaps, the trailer swaps, that kind of thing, which might be quite nice to actually have that. Like it's swapping listenership as opposed to money.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be good to see. Yeah. Next one. What podcast app will have the best year in 2026?
Yeah, this is one where I've tried to do my clever little answer, but I do back this to an extent. iHeartRadio, because they just announced that they're supporting video in open RSS form. So like we've just talked about Spotify there. Obviously you could upload and watch video podcasts on Spotify, but that's like uploading the video to Spotify, it overrides your audio, and there's all sorts of issues, like it's siloed, whereas this is just, I've uploaded audio and video in the same feed, and it's clever enough just to serve up whatever the listener wants. There's no extra uploading, there's no walled gardens. So I think this is really good to see. I would love to think that this will get people, who want to consume video podcasts over iHeart and away from YouTube and Spotify. But then the not necessarily pessimistic side of me, but the realist in me wonders how many actual just podcast consumers will know or care about this. YouTube and Spotify, they're so big. Are they just going to remain the default discovery places and continue to dominate? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that HLS is a really interesting tech, and it kind of goes away from our earlier conversation in a way, or my earlier prediction. HLS being the kind of method whereby you can attach video and audio to one RSS feed. So you've got a video version, but you've also got an audio version. So if you're out there on the go, you're in the car, whatever it might be, the phone is off, the phone screen is off, you get the audio version. And so it streams nicely, there's not huge size, all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you pick up your phone, you open up the screen, there's a little button to switch to the video feed. And you actually just seamlessly switch over to the video feed and you can watch it. And I've found myself, there's a few shows that I listen to just now, which I maybe mentioned a bit last week, whereby they do record video and they do show screenshots and stuff like that. They're quite good at making sure that you don't need the video. So they say things like, if you're watching the video, we're just showing you the screenshot just now, but if you're not, I'll describe it to you anyway. So they're quite careful over their audio listeners. But there are times where I'm walking down the street and I'm listening on a walk, and I just want to pull out my phone and switch over and just look at like a 2-minute clip, essentially, just what they're talking about right there and then. And that's really simple in HLS. It doesn't take up your data because you're not streaming the video the whole time like you would be in YouTube or whatever, but you can switch over to it when you need to. So I think that's a great tech that's going to become, and there's so much talk about that in the podcast standards project just now. Podcast 2.0, all those areas where that is going to be hopefully brought in more and more over this different podcast hosting platforms over the next year or so. So I think that's going to come in. Now, I've completely lost my train of thought. What were you talking? Where was I going with that again? What was your prediction?
Yeah, so I was talking about iHeart doing the RSS based video, but just wondering if the general podcast consumer will know or care about this.
Yeah, so absolutely. Yeah. And I think it kind of goes against it in that I think it is more, I think your prediction earlier is the right one, which is people will go back into dedicating themselves to audio and being careful about if you want to record a video, it shouldn't be. But equally, I think that this is a big thing. I think that there are examples of shows that can do video and audio quite nicely together, depending on the format. And as long as the hosting platforms like iHeartRadio have dedicated themselves to doing this year, go ahead and do that. I think that could be a big change this coming year. There's a few apps already. We've got like True Fans is one. So Sam Sethi, friend of the show here, has an app called True Fans, which you can listen to podcasts on. It's got a lot of really cutting edge stuff, Podcast 2.0 related, one of which is HLS. So if somebody has a hosting platform that supports this, you can do that on his just now. Fountain is another. I believe Pocket Casts potentially have, or they at least have announced that they're going to quite soon. So maybe if Pocket Casts kick into that, then they could have a big year actually if people are interested in taking on listening and watching in that format. But yeah, potentially. Okay. Any more on that, Matthew?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I guess just one last thing, and it's a whole subject of itself, but I've heard in the past that hosting could get quite expensive if you're trying to set up a show this way. So I guess that problem would need addressed at some point, if you weren't willing to pay like £50 a month to host your podcast.
This is the big conversation in the podcast standards project right now, is all the hosts think it's a great idea. They want to go that direction. They want to offer that for their listeners. For their podcast hosts. Podcast hosts are asking for it. They want to be able to publish video recordings via HLS. Well, they don't really care what the tech is, but HLS is one way to do it. But every single host is very, very nervous about enabling this because it escalates your delivery charges, your storage charges by like 10 times. Like easily. And we've seen that with Alitu as well. We've investigated this because we've added video recording, we've added video editing. So you can now record and edit videos in Alitu. And that was one of our biggest issues, was figuring out, like, how do we actually store this? What quality do we actually record them at? Because you go 4K video at like full quality and they're gigabytes and gigabytes of videos. So it costs a fortune as a platform to do that, like 10, 15, 20, like loads more to actually do that. So you just can't charge the same money. So yeah, that is the worry. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's something that will have to be solved, because if not, YouTube could just own podcasting in a couple of years. And that's the end of it.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, totally. Well, you've seen, now what they called now, Rox, who works with Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO. They've launched their own hosting platform, which is called Flightcast. So Flightcast, and their big thing is their video first. But did you notice what their bottom pricing tier was?
No.
Yeah, I think last time I looked, it was 50 quid or $50. So that is that's them just acknowledging the fact that if you want to go video first, it has to be more expensive. I'm just looking out quick to make sure I've got that right, but I'm pretty sure that was the pricing tier. It was something like $40 to $50 for the basic tier.
Yeah.
But you get everything you need for publishing video there, so yeah.
Yeah, it's just too much though, isn't it, for most people? Far too much.
Yeah, $50. Just found it. $50 for one podcast. Yeah. It's a commitment for sure. Yeah. Okay, right. What have we got next, Matthew?
Let's talk about formats or styles. Like what format or style do you think might have a big breakout year in 2026?
I was writing down mine on this, and I was about to write it, and I basically was about to write exactly the same as yours, unprompted. So you go for it. I won't steal yours. You'd written it down first.
Yeah, I think
it's interesting though, because sorry, Matthew, it's interesting though because I literally had the exact same thought and was about to write it down.
Yeah, well, that's a good sign. We'll both be wrong then. We'll be wrong together. But yeah, I mean, no secret. Like, we've talked about this quite a lot recently. Like, not necessarily always solo episodes, but I think we'll see more solo episodes. We'll see them on the shorter side, quite rough, raw, unpolished, but completely human content. So going completely away from what we were talking about. Could AI take what I've said and really polish it up? And this is completely the opposite of that. These are episodes where a podcaster is just starting the recording and saying, here's what I'm thinking today, or here's what surprised me this week, or I'm going to talk to you about a problem that I'm working on that I haven't quite solved yet. I think the caveat here is these can't just be eclectic rambles about your life. Like, I'm not saying you couldn't do this podcast if you want, but I still do think you need a topic here and a niche and all the stuff we talk about when planning a podcast. But I think, that raw, generally solo, generally a bit shorter human content will shine through this year. So sounds like you agree with me then, Colin.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's spot on. I think even down to the kind of, it's the diary style, the follow along, but with a goal. As you say, it needs to have a purpose. It needs to have a particular audience you're reaching. It needs to have a particular activity you're kind of documenting, whether it's, starting a business, whether it's your journey around learning, like how to play a new sport, whether it's whatever it might be. It's following a particular journey, I think, and that's what makes the difference. And I think beyond that as well. And we've had a few conversations about this recently, Matthew. It's the quality, actually, the roughness, the rawness, the unpolishedness, actually, is a feature rather than a bug, because it shows that it's human. It's actually people hearing you walking along a beach or walking through a forest, and seagulls in the background, or a car driving by, or whatever it might be. Like, it's a little stamp that it's human. And not that AI couldn't replicate that as well, but there's just something more identifiable about it. And when you tie that to the content itself being much more diary and personal style, I think that's the kind of thing that people are going to follow along with and really enjoy. And I've heard more of this. In fact, it's often, the way I've seen this delivered often is that it's the premium content. You're a member of a membership and you actually pay, and then part of that that product is that you get these kind of diary style thoughts, just like what voice note style. I think I've heard some people call them voice note style. In fact, did you not do an episode on that called
That's
voice
right.
note style podcasting?
Yeah, with Becky. Yeah. recently.
Yeah. Was that her thought as well then? Was that her approach to it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our tagline was a voice note from a smart friend. And I mean, you're definitely right to say, like, there's no reason why AI couldn't replicate something like this, but it simply doesn't need to, because, you know, if you're doing these things anyway, you're just documenting it. And do you remember, like, a couple of months ago, I had a look in Apple Podcast Connect. We talked about this, where my non-fiction show with very self-contained episodes, I was getting completion rates of like 70%, whereas my narrative ongoing audio drama was like over 100%. So if you apply that to non-fiction and you're on this kind of diary style learning journey, there's a progression, there's a narrative. People don't want to, you know, they're not going to get to like 10 minutes to go and switch off because they need to know what happens. So
Yeah.
I think you're increasing your overall engagement as well, which, as we've spoke about, is, you know, is more important than just simple download numbers. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons why this type of show is going to do very well this year.
Yep. The concept of adding imperfections is really strange as well, isn't it? People are talking about the act of, you know, adding in a dog bark or a mistake of some sort so that it sounds more human. It's like this, that again, that stamp of approval that this is human. What do you think of that? The fact that you're going to add mistakes, you're going to add imperfections to try and put that stamp on it. Do you think that works?
I think companies, if they go down that route, it's a bit cynical, because it's not easy. It's not hard, just to be in real life and let things unfold as they happen. I think to go out your way for the Amazon man to come or whatever is just a bit weird, or to edit the audio, whatever. I think that's strange. I think just give the presenter, you know, if you're a big company and you're hiring somebody, just give the presenter permission to, you know, give them a Rode wireless micro and a phone and say, go out and record your episode on a walk or whatever. Like, life will come at you. You don't need to worry about manufacturing it.
Exactly. Cool. Okay, perfect. What is the podcast advertising market going to do in 2026, Matthew? Do you see a bit of growth, a plateau, or a decline in the advertising market? Any other aspects there?
Yeah, I mean, like, as far as I know, the podcast advertising landscape has been pretty healthy, and there's been loads of growth in recent years. I guess the only caution I'd throw to that is, like, will that be offset by just the sheer volume of AI slop out there? Like, will advertisers see numbers and will they start to question what's even real, who's even listening? Will that make them more cautious? And then, I'm not necessarily saying it'll lead to a downturn, but could it lead to like a plateau?
Yeah. I think you're right. It'll lead to wariness, reticence, as they say, to get involved in the advertising platforms. The advertisers will be reticent to get in. There's just more risk, I think. I think there's still growth. I think the big video shows are still accelerating the market. The big popular ones are just taking off entirely. They're still gaining hundreds of thousands of listeners, subscribers every single month. So they're still bringing more and more mainstream interest. I mean, that's the thing. Like, mainstream advertisers still don't even look at podcasts. Like, the vast majority of them. There's so much of the advertising revenue is just still not spent on podcasting specifically. So the more the Rogans and the like, the Call My Daddies, all those shows bring more mainstream advertisers in, the better, the more they grow, even if they're kind of not really traditional podcasting anymore. They'll grow the market as a whole. The hope that I have, and I think a prediction for this year I would have, is that there'll be more realization of the power of tiny shows. The power of a show with just 300 listeners, 500 listeners, maybe even just 100 listeners for really targeted advertising. So it's kind of always been the case, but it's the bigger advertising realizing that, you know, if you sponsor an audience of 500 listeners, that actually 400 of those listeners will actually listen to the host and go and buy the product potentially. The difference is, or the decider here is whether we make it easier to do that. So hopefully I've got a dual prediction, which is that the big advertisers will realize the power of that. But some of the platforms out there will make it much easier to sponsor 5, 10, 15 small shows in your topic all at once. I think that would be a great thing to see.
Yeah, fingers crossed. I agree. It's
It's like the Facebook advertising of podcasting. Like, can you get in there and just say, I've got a budget of $200. Here's the keywords I want to target. Just put me out there on whatever you can. Like, if somebody can create that for podcasting, that's a huge boon.
Cool. Anything else on advertising or that? Or
I don't think so. Here's a one for you. Going against the grain. Will Apple make any meaningful updates to Apple Podcasts in 2026?
Yeah, it's not an app I use. I can't remember the last time I was actually in there, but to me, like, improved search seems like a no-brainer. As far as I know, it still heavily focuses on things like the title, the name of the podcast, and the episode titles, and even like the creator name. And those are all fine. Like, it should pay attention to these, but there's a lot more they could pay attention to now. There's a lot more they could search. So I would say improved search might be something we would see from Apple, hopefully. What do you think?
Yeah. Am I allowed to say just no? My prediction is no.
Just nothing.
I don't know. I'm conflicted on this. I think you're right. I think improved search would be a big one. I think just adding some of the other power features that keep me away from listening to it as well. The things like being able to set listen speed on certain shows, being able to set a starting point. There's a few features in Pocket Cast that I use all the time that are kind of those power listening features that I miss from Apple Podcasts. But do you know what? I have actually, for the first time in probably ever, I have thought about moving over to Apple Podcasts in the last few months, partly because of the automatic chapters. Like, is that something that you think about at all?
Not really, no. Nah, I mean, I wouldn't say I don't use chapters, but I would rather they were at least chapters the host had created. Automated chapters, to me, they're a bit garbled and not very useful. So maybe
I do agree. I wish that more hosts did chapters, but given that basically none ever do, I actually think that for a lot of the shows that I listen to, they're quite long, maybe an hour and a half, and I'd love to get through more of their episodes. I'd love to listen to, so there's a few shows that I listen to that are an hour to an hour and a half long, and I would love to listen to more of their content. I would love to listen to more parts of their episodes, but I just don't have time to listen to an hour and a half every single week for 5-10 different shows. There's certain shows that I listen to every single week, no fail, because they're the ones I love, but then there's another kind of 5 or 10 who I would like to listen to more, but I just don't have time. And if they had chapters, and this is my thinking, if they had chapters in them, I would open them up every single week, and I would pick out a few segments of those shows that are really relevant to me, and I would go through it and listen to them. So host-made chapters would be perfect for that, but I think the Apple automatic chapters will be good enough to actually help me just navigate through some of those kind of second-tier shows and actually listen to more parts of it. And I think that's of benefit to the shows, to the podcasts, because I'm going to listen to parts of their show and stay loyal to them, get to know them more, rather than nothing at all, which is the current option for many of them. So I don't know, does that not make sense to you at all, Matthew, or is it not kind of not the way you'd go about it?
It's got me thinking about another feature, like if a podcast app creators listening to this, they could come to me for more ideas. Imagine like a almost curation feature where like you've got 8 shows that you subscribe to, and the podcast app at any point you could go in and here's your, the episodes that are in your queue. Here's all the chapters from all the episodes, and you just go through and tick the chapters that you're interested in, and then it creates almost like a magazine style program. So like, you've got these couple of segments from like a golf show you're into, you've got a health and fitness show, you've got this segment, then a podcast industry show, you've got these couple of, and it's just a big magazine. I'm sure a lot of podcasters would take offense at that, but then the counter argument is just make more compelling content in chapters. So
I think that's really interesting. Yeah, totally. I don't think there's anything damaging about the thought that you've got limited time in your week, and the sheer power of podcasting is that you can go long form and people will follow along, and people become so loyal to your show and love your show so much that you will listen every week. And I have 3 to 5 shows like that I listen to every week, and they take up, let's say, 5 hours of my podcast listening time every week. That is non-negotiable. They're the shows that I listen to every week, and they've won that that place in my heart, my head, through sheer great content and over the years. Whereas there's other shows, it's hard to win yourself into that 5. There's other shows, 10 to 15 of them, like I say, that I like, that I do enjoy, but I just won't listen to the whole thing. And I think that's exactly it. It's kind of a way to listen to them. And there's probably a way to kind of, maybe that's an avenue into that top tier where I would listen to the whole of every one if I start to enjoy more and more segments of those shows. So I don't think that's against, the principle of podcasting or takes away from the longer term shows. I think it's probably just a way to be able to showcase yourself more potentially. But I love that. It's a really good idea.
Yeah, it's not like, I wouldn't compare it to like chopping things up like shorts. And I know there's arguably a place for them, but yeah, a chapter, you could still have like a 20-minute chapter or whatever. It could still be a very
absolutely
in-depth discussion on a certain thing. So yeah,
yeah, that's great
stuff.
Yeah, if you could categorize them in your listening, so I use Pocket Casts. Maybe I've got my category in Pocket Casts, which is my full listen shows, but then I've also got a category which is my chapterized shows, and then there I could just get a list of all the chapters of all of them this week. Yeah, that's really cool.
Was that your manufactured imperfection there on your phone dinging?
My phone didn't ding.
Did you not hear that?
Off there?
Did you not hear that? There was
I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, there was like I don't know what it was, like a notification sound, which I'm
weird.
Certain it wasn't at my end. But as we were talking about, this is human content. These things happen. So
I think it must have been Matthew. I didn't hear a thing on my end. Maybe in your Slack or something.
Yeah, I'll look in it.
Cool. Okay. Right, before we'll jump into a few, I think it's worth going through. So they're the ones we kind of spent a bit of time thinking about, but we've got a few other questions which we haven't necessarily put a load of thought into, but should we do some quick fire ones, Matthew?
All right, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's go in, because we're only... just before we jump into that, I'll just mention Alitu again. Obviously, our content is always sponsored by the products and the services we put out. Alitu is our podcast maker app, and we built it 7 or 8 years ago now to be the easiest way to create, the easiest way to edit your podcast. And these days, that's our big standout, is making editing super easy. So we have a podcast specific audio editor built in there, now video editor as well. So if you do video podcasts, you can edit and record your videos in there too. But it's got automatic ums and ah removal, it's got breaths removal, silences removal, it's got a waveform editor that's super easy to cut parts out, to skim through quickly, to preview your cuts. It's got a transcript editor, so you can edit your whole show as if it's a Word document as well. Make it really quick to skim through and take out those big fluffy parts or those big mistakes. And then it's got call recording, it's got podcast hosting, and it's also got hosting integrations as well. So if you already have a host that you love and work with, you can integrate Alitu with that, so you can create, record, and edit in Alitu and then push to those podcast hosting platforms that you already use and love as well. So if you want to try it out, we'd love to see you over there. We'll help you save hours on your podcast editing over the next month or so. So go and check it out at alitu.com. That's alitu.com. And you get a 7-day free trial, so you can try it out for an episode, see if you like it, and stick around if you like it. But yeah, thanks for checking it out and supporting the podcasting, the blogging, the videos that we do to support the podcast industry. All right, Matthew, should we jump through a few of these? Let's go into a couple of the longer term ones. What do you think? What do you predict will be the year where the majority of podcasts will be video first with audio only as the byproduct?
Not going to happen. I just don't think
Never.
That'll happen. Yeah. What about you?
Agreed. Never. I don't think the majority will ever be video first, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Will RSS still exist as the primary podcast distribution method in 5 years, or will something else win out? Do you think RSS still exists in 5 years?
Yes. Yeah. And I'm not just saying that because I hope it does. I think it will. What about you?
I think it does too. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's so much value in it. There's so much momentum still in the industry behind open podcasting standards. I think Apple are still behind RSS and open podcasting for the most part too, even if maybe Spotify and YouTube are not. So I think there's enough power behind it to keep it around. And I think just the fact that it's just... it's such a great way to deliver the shows that we listen to and make it consumable everywhere that it'll just stick around as well, for sure. What do you think is the next major platform to launch podcast features? So by this, I mean platforms that don't currently think of themselves as a podcasting platform. What do you think? Any major platforms you think will launch podcasting features in the near future?
Not accurately or successfully. Like, there's always platforms say it. Like, I think I heard recently TikTok claiming they've got a podcast. It was literally just a video on their platform, not a podcast.
Really?
And Facebook, yeah, remember their disastrous dabble with podcasting. So, yeah, like these things pop up and they quickly fail, and I don't necessarily see that changing anytime soon. Are you got any you could think of?
I think there's going to be a bit of a trend around the complementary industries, the complementary tools. I think this goes back to what I was saying earlier about podcasting becoming a bit of a capability as opposed to a kind of solo feature. It's part of your bigger content mix. And so email is a good example of this. You've got Beehive. So, you know, Beehive, the newsletter platform.
Yeah.
They launched recently podcasting in their newsletter platform. So they now have podcast hosting inside their platform. So you can much more easily now post audio to your subscription newsletter. By that I mean like a paid subscription newsletter or your free one, to be fair. You can include the audio files in the newsletter. I think they link through to their own hosting, but it's like, so it's not actually embedded in the newsletter, but they're making it really integrated for you to actually promote a podcast via email. And that means hosting the audio too. So I think that was really interesting, the fact that Beehive have jumped into that, even though they are email newsletter first. And I think it makes a lot of sense for the other email platforms to follow that. I wonder about other hosting types. So website hosting, for example. So I wonder if you'd see website hosts start to make it simpler for people to host things like audio or video on their websites in that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was always a kind of thing we had to talk about, like when, you know, the WordPress site was the most common way to have a podcast website, and we always cautioned against, like, don't just upload, even though you could, like, you've got an RSS feed there built in, don't just serve up audio via that, because you could get shut down in that. But yeah, I mean, it wouldn't take a lot, presumably, for a big website provider just to build that in, would it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and what else is complementary? You've got, blogs you're talking about. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe some of the blogging platforms would jump over. You had the old plugins, remember, like Blueberry's PowerPress plugin. That was the way to run a podcast on your own WordPress. So yeah, I think it'll be less a surprising platform like TikTok deciding it, or LinkedIn deciding to run like a podcast hosting platform, and more somebody that runs creator tools, kind of more coming into the podcasting sphere, I think. Right. What else? Do any of these other questions jump out at you, Matthew?
We talked about Spotify. Will Spotify still be investing in podcasting in 3 years, or will they retreat, go elsewhere, get bored, go bust?
I don't know. Like, I find them really interesting as a company, because they did invest so much in years past into podcasting, but then they've so much more started to compete with YouTube. But then partially that's because YouTube more came into the podcasting space as well, and they're going so video heavy. I think I find their approach to it all really kind of almost confusing. The pullback, the push in, the pullback, the push in. The fact that, like we said earlier, the buying of Anchor, taking those features out. I think they're just a company that loves to experiment, and they'll try things, and they're not afraid to shut it down again after a while as well. So I have no doubt they'll still be experimenting in podcasting and playing around with things. But I don't know if we'll see the same kind of $100 million deals for exclusive podcasts. Do you see that as having worked out? Do you think the whole paying $100 million plus for Joe Rogan, do you think that worked for them?
No, it doesn't work for. I mean, on the one hand, it works for you when you get 100 million, but for your content, the minute your content only exists in one place, like when you can't even be on YouTube or that, it's just like, yeah, you're taking the money and that's great, and we would all do that. But at the same time, your content it's essentially just gone. So, you're right. They are an interesting company, and I feel they're in too deep to just pull out of podcasting. But yeah, they're a hard nut to crack, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're funny. Okay, cool. Right. What about a couple of personal ones, Matthew? What do you predict will be your biggest personal win in 2026? Let's talk about your personal content. It'd be interesting to think about. Like, do you have any big goals in 2026 for your own content? Like, you do your tabletop show, you do audio drama, all that kind of stuff. Like, do you have any big goals in 2026 for that kind of stuff?
It's something I've been thinking a lot about recently, actually, because the tabletop show, I just put out the 150th episode. It's just
Oh,
about
nice.
to hit 200,000 total downloads, and it turns 5 in August. So there's all these kind of little milestones like toting up, and it's just got me thinking about like the target audience for that show is very specific,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just thinking about like what else can I make here, and I don't know yet if that's a book or I'd like to bring in something of the written word, something a bit more philosophical, for lack
Yeah,
of a better
yeah.
term. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking about something. I'm thinking about creating something else other
Yeah,
than the podcast because I think the time is right for it. But
yeah.
just something I'm mulling over at the moment.
I think, and I've thought this a few times when you've talked about that show. I think a one way you could really lean into that and do really well with it is email. Simply, like the fact that there's so many platforms, like a Substack or a Beehive or something similar like that. If you started writing something weekly on that, paired it with the podcast, probably a bit of crossover, but also a few extra little bits in there as well. I think you could grow something like that really nicely. I don't know many, and I've looked around for these. Maybe there's more that I haven't found, but I've not found many good newsletters about tabletop gaming that kind of keep you up to date with what's going on. But more than just the news, like you don't want to just be a news email newsletter, I don't think, but it's like a little bit of the updates, but a little bit of the perspective, which is what we do well, I think, with our podcasting content. I think you could do well with that. Is that like, would you think about that?
Definitely. The caveat is I'm long enough in the tooth to know that experimentation is good, but I would hate to dive into something with half a heart, if you like, and just, not
Yes.
really pay it much attention and naively think, if I could just half-arse this and it's going to do well for me or whatever. I would want to be very specific, very deliberate, very strategic about it and try and do something good. And that would take time investment. So it's something I'll be weighing up carefully.
Aye, yeah. I mean, it's also like writing email like that also is the kind of thing that can turn into a book over time. Like you collate that into something. It helps you create the large, but you're absolutely right. Like it is a commitment for sure. But
what about you then? What are you thinking?
For me, I am really enjoying doing the golf show just now. I'm really enjoying that kind of conversational side of it. The excuse to look into that industry, learn more about it, but also the motivation it gives me to do the practice too, because I'm enjoying getting back into the sport as well. So I'm definitely going to be keeping up with that. And part of the growth technique there actually is I'm going to do this exact thing. I'm going to start a newsletter around it as well and try and find my own voice around it, like what I can contribute, what it's like we've said a few times in the last 6 months, like perspective, not information. Like what perspective can I give on it? And I think it's something around that kind of learning it. It's the diary, it's the follow along. Here's what I'm doing, here's what's working. I've kind of formulated this kind of golf lab persona around it, like bring in my scientific background and my kind of nerdiness around it and bring that into both the newsletter and the podcast. So I'm definitely going to work a bit more on that. But I've also got a kind of inkling to do something around business in Scotland as well. I think there's not really enough, like there's so many great shows that cover entrepreneurship and business growing and startups and things in the UK and the US, but there's just not that much of it in the UK. And I think there's something around interviewing people here around that stuff and things particular to the UK and Europe. And I'd love to actually dig into that a bit more over the next 12 months too, see if I can start maybe, dare I say it, Matthew, an interview show, which we've never really ran very long before. Something like that.
And I know it's a whole subject of its own, but like what would you be doing there that's different from just, I've met this founder and I'm going to speak to them about their journey and, how many have we seen of them? So,
Yeah. Not sure. It needs a lot more thought for sure. I would have to bring in something unique to it. I think in a way it's almost unique enough if it's saying this is the the business growth show or business startup show for the UK, because actually there's not really much in that sense. So the niche is almost enough, but no, I'd want to have someone more interesting than that. But yeah, definitely it's someone I want to dig into. So yeah, could be interesting.
Yeah.
It's all about time though, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. I mean, we've said before, ideas are 10 a penny, but executing them is where the time and money investment happens. So yeah.
That's it. Yep. Perfect. Well, should we tie up there, Matthew?
Yeah, that's been really good. I enjoyed that. I know I was skeptical, but I've really enjoyed it. Hopefully the listener has too.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah, thanks for following along through 2025. If you're out there listening, I hope you have some big plans, some great plans for 2026 as well, and that we can help you a bit with them. So yeah, keep following along, and we'll talk to you next time on Podcraft. Until then, enjoy the podcasting. Cheers.